Kajillionaire. 2 out of 10. Move on.
2 out of 10. Move on. He says. This was your pick.
It was my pick. All right, so we're a podcast.
Yeah, we are.
You want to say the name of our
Podcast is
podcast?
called Cinema Obscura. I have not. Finally, I got through without saying the radio station we were part of about 6 years ago.
Yes. Cinema Obscura. We are short points. Currently missing one of our points, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Steve will be back at some point.
We are but
in
a
the near
lonely.
future.
I almost said a lonely isosceles triangle, but even they have 3 points.
Even
We're a fake
they
triangle.
we can't be a shape.
We're not even a polygon.
We
We can't
can't-
even close.
No, it's. I don't know what any of this has to do
But
with
we do have to
anything.
get more people in.
Mhm.
We're going to get them in eventually. We're going to work on it because
We're going to start kidnapping people from their homes and saying, hey, did you watch this movie? And kind of just move from there and see
I
what
feel
happens.
like, by the law of numbers, you're going to get at somebody who's seen it and give you an honest review.
Yeah.
Like, please, don't be honest about it if you let me go.
And then hopefully,
But we're getting people. So because,
we're getting people.
well,
Yeah.
as like many,
I got enough duct
like
tape.
many misguided boyfriends in the past, it's better with a third.
It's better with a third. Isn't it always?
That's what I'm saying, man.
That's what I've always been saying.
Polyamory is that's our hardline opinion in the world.
That's the one we're doing?
Yeah,
That's today's hard
full
opinion?
send. Full
Okay,
send.
all right. That's
I'm
not,
leaning into
that's
it.
not as controversial as where we could go. So, I'm excited.
Well, I mean, you could just say anything at that point.
You're right, but I do have a job to try to keep, and this does not pay the bills. You saw that 56 cents that we have on our account. Not looking
Hey.
too good.
Hey, everybody had to earn their first.
I guess that's, you gotta earn the money to buy the ticket, right? So.
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal. That movie's getting reviewed eventually.
Oh, we gotta talk about Nightcrawler. I mean, it is, I don't know if it technically falls under, it isn't like super unknown, but it's still not something that the average person knows, that's for sure.
I'll
But
tell you,
today
tell you
we're
what
talking
was
about,
unknown.
yeah, there we go.
Kajillionaire.
Kajillionaire.
2020 American crime dramedy. Comedy drama.
Comedy drama. I would definitely call it a comedy drama. That's how I would.
No, I'm stuck on the
define
crime thing. Like, because maybe I'm crime. I think of heist, murder.
I
This
mean,
was not-
there were heists. There was
this was
crime. There
low
was.
level. They weren't even felonies. Or no, stealing mail was a felony.
Some of these were
Stealing mail is a
felonies.
felony, yeah.
What they did in that guy's house towards the end, that was kind of. There's something wrong about that.
What did they do in his house?
When the guy who was dying.
Oh, all right.
towards the
Well,
end.
we'll
All
get
right.
into
Yeah,
it.
we'll get
So,
to
this was a film.
A
It was
film.
written and directed by Miranda July, who she's a writer, wrote a couple of books, did a lot of on stage work actually, involved part of the Riot Girl movement in the 90s, big female-led punk scene.
I believe this is only her third film, maybe fourth film.
Yeah, no,
something
it
along those lines.
is her third film.
Or at least, written and directed
and
by.
each one had took about wasn't like it was long spaces, so I guess 2005, 2011.
Yeah,
and then
Me,
2020.
You, and everyone we know. Also, The Future, too, that I really want to see after seeing Kajillionaire. This is the third time that I've watched it, and I am the one who recommended this.
So
I guess
let's get into that. Why do you recommend this? Why did you make me sit through this?
So, Kajillionaire, I don't know, I found it one day. It was in my watch list, this never-ending watch list that I have, and I was like, it must have just scrolled across, or I was like, I need to watch this. I don't really remember.
Are you manipulating the podcast to just get through this IMDb watch list?
At some point, it's going to end up being that. But most of the time, the movies I watch, end up falling in these categories anyway. So, Kajillionaire, I decided, let me watch this one day. And then it's one of those nights where I'm just watching it. And I was blown away because I didn't realize, I didn't think anything of it. I thought it would just be, I knew what it was about. I got the vibe of it. I watched the trailer. So I'm like, okay, well, I think just based on all that, your own movie taste. You're like, I'll probably like this. So then I went into it and I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Realized it was relatively unknown. Yeah, this movie, people know about it to a certain degree, but not everybody, So I decided, okay, well, then that makes a perfect podcast recommendation. So then I can have...
considering
Yeah.
we're getting consistent now. We're actually recommending unknown movies.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, well, Phone Booth was last week.
That's it.
A different story.
I'm atoning for my sins of previous days.
All right, you're atoning. Let's find out what you recommend later. I'm ready to hear
right.
Star Wars Episode 3 at this point. Honestly, it was underrated. Okay, but it's Star Wars.
You know what? I don't have Steve here to defend me, and this sucks.
We do have.
We have Steve here in spirit.
Here, though. Yes, but All right, so I decided. I just really like this movie, so obviously I'm giving that part of it away. Barely made it into theaters because it did come out in 2020.
Yeah, so it's
later in 2020, but it came out.
Well, it was in that period of weirdness where it's like the
after
fall
Tenet.
of 2020, and because the summer was its own thing. We don't even have to get into that, but the fall of 2020 was such a weird time in the sense that it's like, is it okay to go out? Should we not?
Some states are allowing you to, some states aren't. Some states are allowing you to go to restaurants, other ones are allowing you to go to the store, to school. Everything
That's
was
3
in
years
flux.
ago already.
It is insane.
God,
and I'm just, we try to forget about it more and more every day. I finally just stopped wearing a mask to my allergist because he took the sign off the door a couple weeks ago. And I think that's the last place that I really wear a mask
piece of shit.
So, what did
spraying your fucking face all over.
I mean,
let's
if I'm
let's
sick.
let's pick up political stances, but they're like 5 years old.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I'm like, the mask thing in 2023. Like, I understand, going for, like, if you're like, hey, if you see some guy that has the flu saying I'm gonna go to work and specifically with no mask, then it's like, okay, I don't really care. But also,
we're just gonna move on from this.
You don't have you don't want to get controversial here?
Do you really want to get into discourse? I say again, it's
the
something.
Mass discourse. It seems like some of the dumbest discourse that I've heard of. It makes sense to cover yourself if you're sick, but if you don't want to, you don't want to. And it kind of, with COVID, obviously I understand, but if you don't want to regularly, it's kind of, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy.
We can move on now.
I mean, you see, you don't even want to participate in the conversation.
I fucking hate this podcast already.
This is already.
I'm out. Good night, everyone.
It's a 2020. Never want to go back. Is the point of that.
The only time I would go back, though, is to review Kajillionaire.
And maybe see this in the theaters. Maybe find out that it was in the theaters because
apparently no one else knew.
No one else knew. No, but Miranda July premiered at Sundance. She obviously
great critic acclaim though.
Definitely,
which makes its unknownness a bit strange. But I guess there's going to be a lot of movies that fly up, and it's like, well, yeah, it was in that period where people weren't sure. Siberia thought it could get away with that, but we saw to that very quickly.
And it probably wasn't a movie that was ever going to be big anyway because of the scale of it. It's a relatively small scale movie with.
It feels very. I got a
with
big,
no
I got
huge actors.
I got an art house feel with this.
Definitely, and like the actors aren't huge. Like they're known, but they're not like you're not getting a Ryan Gosling and a Margot Robbie in a Kajillionaire type movie. So
I could see Margot Robbie.
Oh, I could see it, but you're not getting that name attached. This did not have the money. Can you check the budget there? I don't think this had the. Usually it's.
Yeah, I got it. I could see Wikipedia supremacy.
There we go. 1 point. What is that? 1.6.
No, that was what it did at the box office.
Oh, it doesn't even have the budget. Well, we're gonna assume. I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhere in around that million number, because it. Obviously, you have some actors in here, but you also. It's a very, very small scale movie. The locations are relatively limited. They do have a bunch of locations, but it's not like they were hard locations to film
going to the
at.
airport, it was like the same floor plate. Like the only place.
And even then, that was probably
the only
set.
area that's not in like. Well, yeah, because you have a collection of houses and then just a collection of neighborhoods.
Maybe a store, how many rundown stores,
you could drive down
in
the street
LA.
and film.
And the entire thing was filmed in LA, aside from, I don't even know if that scene in New York was really in New York. They could have just,
filmed in a different area of LAX.
That's what I mean. And they do show the New York skyline, but it's anything.
I forgot about that scene. You're correct.
But even so, it doesn't necessarily mean New York. Either way, filming in New York and LA are a lot easier than many other places.
What hard thing to do to film on location there.
Yeah, so the point we're trying to make, obviously, low budget, small scale movie, and not that many people know about it, so I decided to recommend it because I do like it a lot. And I guess we'll just talk about what we each thought about the movie in general, and then kind of just get into specific elements of it. So I want to hear, what did you think of it, just more generally?
I actually wasn't that impressed with this movie.
Okay.
It's well acted, that's for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Evan Rachel Wood, who I got a great giggle out of it because I was shown 13.
Oh, 13. I love 13.
About 2 years ago. And it's the most fucking unhinged movie you'll ever watch.
That movie is insane. I love that movie.
I almost want to review that movie.
That's a bit well known, but I don't know. I'd have to see. I don't know how well.
Aside from being a TikTok sound, I don't know.
Wait, there's a TikTok sound in that movie? I don't know, man. I don't don't do the TikTok thing, man.
Hey, you do.
I'm
You
like
had
80 years old.
one of the previous episodes. You're talking about how much.
I
you're
mean,
on
no,
TikTok.
follow us on TikTok. Are we on TikTok?
No, not yet.
Oh, we'll be on TikTok. Follow us on TikTok.
Eventually.
We'll get there. We're on Instagram, though. Short Points Podcast.
You can follow my TikTok, and I'll bomb you with them.
It'll be linked.
You want to open your inbox and see like 64 messages? I'll be that guy. That's what I usually am.
Like sending people TikToks, or
Oh,
you just
dude,
go in
I'm bad.
straight Schmeat pictures.
Just depends on how well I know you.
No, you followed me back. That must mean you want to see the Schmeat.
Hey,
That's
me in 2011 when that girl I like followed me on Facebook.
all right. Moving on.
All right. Speaking of women, we have
Old Dolio.
Old Dolio Dine, who's like, so this family.
I think they set you up perfectly in the beginning in that opening scene of letting you know who and what they are.
Yeah, which I kind of have for one thing. So let's go over some cast here. It's a family of three. It's Teresa
Dolio.
and Robert Dine. They're a husband and wife.
I didn't even catch their last name at any point. I was surprised.
Although they all have the same.
Obviously they do, but I meant like I don't remember a point in the movie seeing the last name. But I get maybe on the check. I'm trying to think of like when I would have seen.
Regardless. So they are respectively played by Richard Jenkins, who I remember in Killing Them Softly. That's a great movie. A movie that could be reviewed.
Yeah, I
for
haven't
Cosby.
seen it, so
It's
I
a
don't
great
know.
movie.
I know, but
he's
Brad
been in
Pitt,
different
right?
things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Deborah Winger. She's a very accomplished actress.
I don't recognize her as much as I do the other people, but
The
I'm
movie,
sure that
I saw her
seen her
credits, or she was in Officer and a Gentleman. I know that's a big movie.
I haven't. Not familiar with it.
Yeah, so they're a trio of a family. They're thieves and con people, I guess is the long and short of.
Yeah.
Because the scene.
They just want to skim. They just want to skim.
Yeah,
As Richard Jenkins puts it.
Yeah. Speaking of Richard Jenkins, I have a special relationship with him.
Is this a conflict of interest? What's going on here?
Yeah,
I don't.
my husband.
Me and him. I would have went in that hot tub. Is what I'm saying.
But no,
What are you saying?
it's gonna get so much more weird when I transition into what I was gonna say. He is a spitting image of my therapist. Like, I could hold up the two, and I just kept looking at him. I'll be like, "That's the guy."
That's my.
Have
guy,
you ever
yeah.
seen somebody in a movie that looks like somebody you know?
Yeah,
You can't
or
shake
vice
your head
versa.
and
Yeah.
Like I remember you showed me Enemy years ago, and I just
Enemy. I forgot about that one.
Jake Gyllenhaal just looked like Steve that entire movie.
He did. He had like the exact, and he always kind of looks like Steve, but especially in that movie. If you forgot what Steve looks like, go back to a pretty.
He's
good
in my
movie,
mind
so.
and he's in my heart. I miss
Yeah.
that man.
So we got
So
Old
basically,
Dolio.
it's a movie opens. They steal, like the opening scene is them stealing out of the post office. Which, all right, I need to know. I don't know if you're in the know or if you know somebody who knows.
Mhm.
I've never worked for the post office. It can't be that fucking easy to steal out of a post box. Like she just reaches it like a fucking turn of her wrist and she's in the other one.
She has very long arms. So the only thing I can think, and she is very skinny. That's the only thing that I can think of. Like,
But
hey, this is possible.
That to me, that feels like something the post office would think of.
Do you trust the government?
No,
well
I
do you
don't.
think-
But if one thing I trust, the federal government doesn't like their shit getting taken.
Correct, but it does. Like, I don't know. It seemed plausible enough for me. You know, like
I
it
guess it was-
seemed plausible.
but
Like it doesn't need to.
It just felt so fake that she could reach in and just grab it. Like, all right, so
I
I'll
would
just
be
never get a post box.
To me, I would be
Fucking-
surprised,
and
but I
I-
would be curious to someone that like works specifically in that section of the post office. Like, hey, is that something that's even remotely feasible? Because it
Do we
seems
get
legit.
who do we know that works for the post office?
I mean, my mother, but she doesn't
Get
work
your mom
in
on the
that
podcast.
section.
Let's have a
Hey,
Cheryl podcast.
Yeah, that's. I don't think she doesn't really work at the PO boxes, so that kind of you know.
Oh, it's a separate
That's
it's a separate unit.
Well, that would be it's a whole separate thing.
Alright.
So
But
I
even
don't
so
assume,
it basically, and they steal mail. They try to return gift cards. That brilliantly awkward scene.
They join a bunch of online giveaway, like just persistently on their phones
They're
trying to
just
join
scamming
things.
the whole time.
They're just trying to skim and get by, which I want to bring up is like the weirdest anti-capitalist sentiment I had ever seen in a movie. Not that I think that it's promoting this ideology, because it's not really an ideology, but it's a interesting take on anti-capitalism that I think.
Well, they were just. I mean, from what I understood was that what Dolio would go on to say later in the movie, where she was like, they have the money. So like the reality is they just. It sucks because I feel like somebody could point to this movie and be like, yeah, there was, you know.
I don't think they have money. Where did they get money from?
I mean, they bought all those fucking gifts at the end.
I'm sure they just skimmed. They figured out a way to get that. I don't think they have money. I didn't get the impression that they had money.
I understood that, at least from what Richard Jenkins' character says, is that it's not out of struggling or some kind of necessity. Like
it's not. Well, it's a forced necessity.
Yeah, it's not that they can't work. They have some weird concept of wanting to live outside the system.
Yeah, that's
kind
why
of like
said,
a Red Dead Redemption thing.
That's
kind of
why
like,
I'm saying,
we're outside the law. We don't live
weird
in
anti-capitalist, because they're like, well, we hate the idea of capitalism. Well, they're going to get you into their systems on their cameras and this and that, and like all these like surveillance, like awareness things. And it's like sometimes you'll see that put in a movie, and you're like, oh, I can agree with that. But it's weird to see it portrayed in a way that's like, oh, that's damaging to everyone's psyche around you and yourself.
Well, it's funny because it's almost like a different lens of it, to where it's like
exactly, you don't see
other
that very
movies
often.
will paint it a little bit more with more bravado, to like, yeah, fuck the system, I'm outside of it.
Exactly.
But in reality, these look like the fucking psycho Christians you run into outside of stores.
It's because they. So let's talk about where they live for a second, because we can get there.
Yeah. So see, I was failing to kind of grasp.
What the business was? Because the business, they don't ever get into it. All you hear is sounds. And this time that I really realized, like, I thought, do you have an idea of what the business was?
It looked like some kind of, Dolio says it has something to do with sanitation. That's why the soap bubbles come down the wall.
And the only thing that I can think of is, because I at first thought, like, hey, maybe it's like a car wash or something, or like, I have no idea, but it doesn't seem like it would be a car wash. It doesn't really make sense. And you hear all these sounds, but then the sign on the wall I read is just Bubbles Incorporated. I think they just make bubbles. I think that's just a weird, like, I don't even think that's, like...
I have a bit of a gripe. I work in an industry that deals with, like, water getting through walls and whatnot. It doesn't work. Bubbles wouldn't just phase through the wall like it's fucking... I
don't think that's necessarily meant to, be that realistic.
I know.
I
know it was an artistic thing. Was there supposed to be some artistic merit to it? Do you know?
From what I know, yes, but I don't know the art. Like, I've been trying to think about what that's supposed to represent, and you can go a lot of different ways with it. I don't know if there's one specific representation that's necessarily correct. And I don't know if Miranda July is revealed what her interpretation of it is. I don't necessarily have an interpretation, but it is something that does keep me like thinking, at least about the movie, as far as like what that might be. I do know that in those scenes, I think it looks nice. Like, I think the whole movie, at least from the opening scene to everything else, it looks real and it looks nice. Like, they're nice scenes that look good. They look nice to look at.
Yeah, there's a lot of aesthetic colors.
Yeah, as opposed to something, and this is its own stylistic choice, but Phone Booth is not a movie that's like beautiful to look at. This movie, I think, is like great to look at. Like, every scene, I feel like it's not too overly stylized, like something like a Wes Anderson, where that's his thing. No shade on Wes Anderson, but it's not like it's going to be overly stylized. It still looks like there's some style and effort put into the cinematography, but it still looks significantly realistic. It plays with that, like, it's slightly artistic in the way that it represents its style, but also realistic, and I don't know, I like the way that it balances.
It does.
I love the way that
like
it does go that
artistic
line.
realism and stuff like that.
Yeah, because something like a I don't know, a Safdie Brothers movie or a Sean Baker movie like that, those are the kinds of movies where I think also kind of toe this similar line. But regardless, we're getting into old Dolio, her relationship with her
so like basically
parents.
the first like 20 minutes of the movie, I'd wager, up until they kind of get the crux of it. So you find out they owe back rent, because it looks like they just scam it. Like, it looks like they're incapable of getting through. Like, the film paints the three of them, Evan Rachel Wood's character a little less so, because one thing I wrote in my notes, which kind of made me laugh, is that for the fact that if this is their way of life, they're really fucking bad at conning people. They don't know how to
They're
lie.
halfway decent.
No, but they fold on their lies every single time. It's the weirdest.
In what scenario do you mean? Like
So all right, I'm not a professional con artist, but you know, I've lived a life.
What have you done?
No, I make that sound like I'm some crazy gaslighter. I'm not, but like, I don't know, commit to the lie for more than 4 seconds.
But in what situation are you talking about in the movie? I mean, I don't remember what.
I don't know. I remember the one scene where they get paid $20 by that real piece of a word person that's like has to go because of her parole. She has to go to like mother-daughter course, and she doesn't want to go.
Yes.
So she pays Evan Rachel Wood to do it, and like there's a scene where she gets there and it's like, oh, are you looking for a signature? And she was like, well, don't I have to get something? Like I don't know, just they did not strike me convincing. Like I've met people that lie in my life.
No, I think Evan Rachel Wood is just like
so socially inept.
So socially inept that like, because you could tell her parents, especially when you get to those older people's houses and stuff, they know how to talk like real people if they want to. Whenever they speak together or with old Dolio, it sounds
it's stilted.
It's such a weird, because nobody that
they don't
most
talk
people
like
know exactly.
It kind of made me hard to get into it at first because I'm like, are they gonna be like this the whole movie? Like they don't fucking talk like people.
But I think that's just because of that weird mindset that they have, and I think that is portrayed excellently by the way that they talk and the way that they communicate, and the fact that you know later in the movie, oh, they can talk like normal people to each other and say things like when they're pretending. Because as they get into, like, with the gifts later, and Deborah Winger saying, well, you want us to be fake, insincere people, and that seems to be what they think talking like that sounds like, or is like.
She was, Deborah Winger is so vicious in this movie.
So is Richard Jenkins. Like, these are movie villains, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't get much.
I like, basically, so, you see, because at first it seems like they're all on the same page, and they're all doing this together. And then they just meet some odds and ends characters.
I think even from the very jump, it's clear that like the relationship between all of them is definitely not equal, despite the fact that they split everything 3 ways, right? Or supposedly split everything 3 ways.
Well, like how the tie, I felt like that was shown right away.
With the tie,
The tie he gets, and he just immediately puts it on.
He immediately puts it on, and then he says, well, you wouldn't know about this because you're not from gentle birth. Like, to his fucking daughter.
Yeah, like,
right? Within the first 3 minutes of the movie.
I love the hypocrisy of it, because it's like, yeah, you weren't from this. Yeah, asshole. You're the reason why that happened.
Yeah, it is like just the way that Richard Jenkins and Deborah Winger, their character names,
and
the way that they.
Evan Rachel Wood develops a scheme to where she wins a contest for a getaway, which I think is a great. Just talking about the viciousness, is it highlights where, for the briefest of moments, she kind of thinks, maybe we could actually take the trip. Maybe we could, scam. Yes. Still thinking of it practically. She's like, maybe we could scam the hotel and fucking do something with it. And number one, Deborah Winger looks at her like she's nuts. And then in the next morning when they're talking, because she says, she kind of frances like, maybe we could do a mom and daughter thing. And then that's when Richard Jenkins has this little soliloquy about how they live outside the system. And he's like, we don't do fucking mother-daughter stuff. And I'm like, Jesus.
And you can, and then Evan Rachel Wood immediately shoots the look to Deborah Winger, but her mother just does not care. Just, like, clearly it's the mom and the dad, and the daughter is, like, 50 feet under a pile of shit.
Oh, yeah, they are horribly emotionally abusive and neglectful. Like, it's laid out pretty clearly.
Because they don't want to baby her, apparently. And even because we talked about Evan Rachel Wood going to that newborn baby class.
Which I think brilliantly highlighted the themes of this movie.
I think it did.
At first, I thought it was awkward at first, but then...
You don't like seeing a little breastfeeding titty? You don't like seeing that?
I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
Fair enough.
But because I like, it's almost like an awakening. Like, the term I kept coming back to throughout this movie is that a lot of it is Evan Rachel Wood's character kind of deprogrammed, because at first in the beginning when they break into the post box, they kind of like she does a little dance while she's doing it. Like she's fully into this lifestyle. Like it's basically this is what she's always known. This is how your family. Because everybody had that growing up, like to where almost until you got.
That's why I think this movie is so impactful.
Until you get a bit older, to where you think everybody's family is the way your family is, and then you get out there, you get some.
Like you start as a child, you start going to like your friend's house, and they just the slightest thing that they do differently is like, oh, that's weird. But like, there's nothing wrong with it inherently, right? Like, okay, some people may, and what controversial, not controversial. It's not gonna be that bad. Some people, okay, immediately take their shoes off when they get in the house. Some people may not.
See,
right?
I really don't think you had to like. I was expecting anything political or what, and you're like, nah, take your shoes off. I didn't know. Are we that far gone in 2023 that like that's like a hard line?
Some people do, some people don't know.
What kind of liberal cup takes his shoes off in his house? That's what I want to know.
There will be arguments in the comments, I hope, about this topic itself.
At least somebody will be talking about it.
Some people do, some people don't, and that's one of those things where, as a child, you may be like, "That's so weird." And I think that sentiment is kind of shown here strongly because it shows you specifically how one family is operated. Assumingly from the day that old Dolio was born, at least from the day that she was born, and kind of just what her childhood must have been like for her to be the way that she is.
Yeah, like I remember we talked about this with Soil and Green, where it's like the implications usually get better than being shown. Mm-hmm. They convey more because it's like you're like, and like the way they've been talking, because she's in the movie, they say at this point she's 26, but still fairly young, and this has been her entire life.
Absolutely.
So like they all talk with like leagues of experience doing this. And to one thing, like if they're just barely getting by as it is, that must have been such an exhausting life for all of them.
Exactly, and that's why with old Dolio, I look at her character, I'm like, you were one of the most tortured characters.
Because
and you don't even know
it. It hits you like she's 26 and she still acts like a child in some moments.
And she doesn't know how to, obviously, social interaction. I think they paint it well, especially when those first couple scenes where she's going to get a massage.
And she can't even be touched.
Can't even be touched, and I think that scene is pretty funny the way that they lay it out too. Especially the other actress that's there with her, that's giving her the massage. She just lays her hands slightly over her, and that's essentially what the massage is. And I don't know. I think they played it for comedy pretty well throughout the entire movie. Honestly.
There's moments like
it's not like a movie where it's like laugh out loud all the time, but it's just like funny little quirky things where you're like, well,
this movie plays a lot of like people getting thrown into strange situations. Because, like...
Very strange situations where you're like, well, I don't know what people would... That's weird. That's very weird. Yeah. Like, especially after, and this is, I'm not going to get into it too much, but just the way that old Dolio reacts after, the big earthquake. And just the reactions of the people around her, those little funny things. Or even the character of the Bubbles Incorporated landlord guy. That guy...
What the fuck was wrong with him? I couldn't...
He was just on the verge of crying all the time. Like, I think that's such a weird character to write.
Yeah.
To be able to just say,
well, it's just all quirkiness. And, like, something I got a feeling is that most people are, like, very awkward or very negative around the other characters. Mainly because... maybe they're not bad at lying, but just they're so apparent in that they're trying to scam the people they interact with.
Yeah.
And like we're living in an age with a lot of scam work. There's scamming online. There's scamming over the phone. You get fucking fake phone calls. There's people stealing your mail.
As long as people have been around, people have been scamming.
Oh, for sure. It's always been going on. It's just I guess I'm getting older now, so I'm hitting the point where I'm seeing it more and more. It just feels so painfully insulting.
And some of it is like, okay, I can see what they're doing, and some of it I'm like, okay, well they're just, trying to get by using little means. Sure, whatever. But like it's clearly this is all from the mind of Richard Jenkins' character.
Yeah, and
you could tell that it's 100% the father.
I try to not be like uber capitalistic about it where it's just like it's my stuff, no one's but I don't know, there is a certain feeling that like somebody's trying to take advantage of you,
and it's all
you, man. Why are you doing it?
And it's all from a place of selfishness in this case. It's not necessarily this, well, I'm doing this for the betterment of the people.
What I like about her, she makes no bones about it that they're struggling to pay the rent, but not in the sense if they've had bad luck. They are willingly taking on this. obviously this doesn't speak for everybody. You know, people get in fucking rotten situations. People get desperate to survival.
But they are good enough, all if they wanted to work normal jobs and at least afford the rent that they have. You know what I mean? Like the $500 a month, whatever it is, they could do that.
$1,500. See, they said it was like 3 months back rent, and they said $1,500. I said, what a bunch of bullshit. In Los Angeles?
Well, did you see where they were living?
I would live there.
Would you? With soap on the walls and with it's an office building with. Do we know what is there air conditioning?
I was wondering what it probably smells like in there.
The weird bathroom situation, whatever was going on there. Is there plumbing? I don't know about any of that stuff. Do they have to use buckets? I don't know. I need more information. But for $500 a month, there probably is not many places that I wouldn't live.
We're
to be fair.
Dipping into the desperate hour of where it's like, you know what, that might be better.
Yeah.
You know, I can make that place my home.
Yeah, but so they live in this weird place. Eventually, you know, they have this
but
the plane situation.
So basically, from winning that contest, Evan Rachel Wood's character develops a plan that they're going to fly to New York, they're going to claim lost luggage, and because the airline guarantees up to $1,500
with the travel
compensation.
Yep. So they go and do this thing while they're in the middle of their con. They meet, and the parents meet first. Gina Rodriguez's character, Melanie.
And what I like is how when they're trying to sell that they're normal. And number one, Deborah Winger's viciousness really gets put on display when they're flying to New York, and the way she talks to her.
Oh my! And then and I love the way that the editing was done here. Like as Richard Jenkins is super nervous about anything, you know, earthquakes, airplanes, anything related to that. Obviously, the earthquake theme we'll get into later. But he's on the airplane. He's like, somebody talk to me, and his wife is like freaking out too. And then old Dolio starts talking about the breast crawl, and the newborn seminar. And then at some point, whenever the turbulence stops, he just claps his hands and goes, "Stop." And I'm like, oh, that is vicious and cold of a way to like,
and the way that,
you know. And the editing,
and the way she's just like, "Are you pregnant? Are you fucking pregnant?"
And then he smells her.
Yeah.
And then it's like, "Are you pregnant?" And then immediately, does not matter what she said, he had to go and just undermine her to her husband and just say like, "Hey, oh, is she pregnant?" And then he smells around her. He's
and there's like that happens a lot. Not even because, like I said earlier, this relationship is horribly manipulative and abusive
on all accounts.
But like that is like the way. Like people get talked. I've been in situations where you get talked to. Like you say something and what you say is immediately undermined, in the sense that like they straight up like they weren't considering anything she said. Probably for most of the movie, like there was a lot of her talking, and they would just acknowledge half of what she said or just turn it. Into
the only thing they cared about is when she had a good idea for a scam or something.
Honestly,
that's just the way that it was, and that's the way it must have been her entire childhood, because that's the only way she knew probably to get any attention from her parents, right? And because you got to assume someone like this is probably homeschooled. I mean, I highly doubt they would have put her in a school system. No way.
I mean, but she knows how to read and write.
So I'm not saying. Well, they're clearly not stupid people. Like they're not dumb people. They're a little out there, but they're not dumb people. They just have a way of doing things. So they probably taught her. But there are words that Gina Rodriguez brings up later, like or something just along the lines of well, you're jonesing. She has no idea what jonesing means.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
There's a socially inept.
Clearly sheltered.
What I like visually they give you that because with Evan Rachel Wood's character, when they dress for the part, they dress more normally. Number one, the dad puts on a shirt that he doesn't take off for the rest of the movie.
Well, is it that? Yeah, that like maroonish, like, and then I love how they just have him framed because he's just this dude with the craziest hair. Because clearly he's not washing his hair very much. Obviously bald. I mean Richard Jenkins, and then his shirt's always half tucked in somewhere. Yeah. And then I love at the end, or not at the end, but before they get the hot tub, where he looks at himself clearly disheveled and I look like a senator. I'm like, okay, bro, you think so? Yeah. But that's where he's been able to put himself there in his mind.
Oh, But you see her, she dresses very nicely going on the plane. So it's
very nicely, but it's also something that's like not normal. Like it's not something that you would see somebody wear.
This kind of pantsuit thing.
I don't know. To me, I saw it as, at least in that costume, like not like I would look twice at a person dressed like that because it's not the way that someone typically dresses.
But it's funny for somebody, and then when Gina Rodriguez's character is introduced, she dressed throughout the entire movie very trendy.
Just whatever people are wearing now.
Yeah, generally now.
Yeah.
And so, like, she dressed Valley Girl, LA stuff. So it's been a great contrast because, like, I imagine the actors clean themselves.
I mean, she's essentially the straight man in all this.
But for sure. But what I like is what I'm saying visually. They showed a difference is that she always seems very clean.
Yes.
Very like her colors seem more vibrant, and her hair is like more nicely done versus the rest of them where they're basically like they're disheveled constantly.
Yeah.
And like Evan Rachel Wood outside of that scene, and when they go out to dinner, she wears the same tracksuit the entire time.
Yeah, that like clearly also doesn't fit her. Like
it's also not.
It's large.
It's also not one
like,
tracksuit. It's like she's got a polo shirt thing going on, and then like a different colored tracksuit above it.
It's just
so obviously it's just whatever they're able to piece together.
Yeah, and what I do love about this movie is though that every single person that's in this movie looks like a real person and not necessarily an actor or actress. Even the real people. I mean, even the actors or actresses that are the big ones. Like, Richard Jenkins just looks like a normal guy, as you said. He reminded you of your therapist, so he's a normal guy, right? Deborah Winger looks like just a normal... I would not know who she is walking down the street. No idea, like, especially the way that the costumes were. Evan Rachel Wood, obviously, she's gorgeous, but in this movie, it's like you just don't look twice because of the way that she dresses, the way that her hair looks, the way that they present her in her costume. Gina Rodriguez obviously looks great, but she just looks like a person. It's not like she's putting on any extra...
Yeah, it's one of those... It's almost like a slice of life, but they're kind of breaking in...
It's an elevated, it's definitely not surreal, but it has surrealist elements.
It's artistic, but it's very grounded at the same time.
Yeah, so I do like that everybody, and all the side characters and everything, it's just like, nobody looks like they're just an actor, an actress. And sometimes that's not necessarily, the actor or actress's fault if they happen to look like a Ryan Gosling or they happen to look like Ana de Armas.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They are some of the most beautiful people in the world, but like they also are actors or great
because
actors.
They got lesser known actors. I feel like we brought up this point a lot. I remember we talked about this with Everything Must Go. Like even though there were Hollywood actors and accomplished actors at that, they all just generally seemed like very realistic looking people.
Yeah.
So
you're able to do that,
Yeah,
and
because
I think movies need to realize
get less involved with makeup.
You see a lot of teen dramas, and it's like all of the most attractive people, and everybody's wearing makeup. Even the extras are wearing makeup, to where it's like it's the perfect makeup on their face. It's not like someone would normally look in real life. Yes, Gina Rodriguez's character wears a lot of makeup, but it's believable because it seems like she's the kind of person that would be wearing a bunch of makeup on her face. Yeah. So it's like, I feel like I understand that, but it's not like, it would be weird if you had Evan Rachel Wood in. Obviously, there's probably some makeup for the movie effects, but they're like,
they're not trying to convey
makeup.
that. They're trying to convey them as basically homeless. So it would look more out of place if they were dolled up. And it would look more stupid.
And I just appreciated that about the movie, because you do see, like, even... just watching the Barbie movie over the weekend, and
I'm sure everybody looked painted in that one.
In Barbie world, I completely understand it, but when they go to the local high school and like every single high school girl has like perfect makeup, it's like, okay, well, you're in LA, but that doesn't necessarily mean, it seemed a little weird. But I just mean generally. But obviously that fit the tone more of that movie, obviously, than this does. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily complaining about the Barbie movie, I'm just thinking of an example of like, well, if I see high schoolers, I'm not going to think of high schoolers with the perfect movie makeup all the time, is what I'm trying to say.
So, going back to the picture show.
The picture show.
So generally, during this plane skim, they meet Gina Rodriguez's character. She's just one of those people that just strikes up a conversation with people, I suppose.
Yeah, and you can tell, and they keep that consistent with her character, because she just kind of... She's talkative. She just
charming.
Likes to talk.
Because some people are just charming in life. They can talk to anyone.
Exactly. I definitely know a few people like that. That can just like pick up a conversation at any point with anyone. You know what I mean?
And what I like, so basically, they take a liking to her. I don't know, because she's just talking to them, or she's entertaining what they're saying. Yes. And there's a great parallel on the plane. Is that the one guy, this random guy on the plane, starts chatting up Gina Rodriguez's character, and
flirting her all up.
And Richard Jenkins and Deborah Winger, they get very defensive, and there's like a moment of like Richard Jenkins trying to sound like he's in charge. He's like, he was trying to scam you. You should check your wallet or something.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, they talk to me. Guys talk to me like this all the time.
Yeah.
So it's funny. It shows a couple of things. One, it shows that it shows that I'm sorry, I blanked for a second.
You're good.
But it shows that they are so lost in their own like mindset that they can't even understand the social cues outside of their circle.
Which is why I love when Richard Jenkins says the line, like once they reveal to Gina Rodriguez like who and what they are. There's two of us. There's three bags. Do you see where I'm going with this? And Gina Rodriguez immediately, not at all. I found that to be that's one of those comedic moments. And that's like because they're inside their own world. There's like there's three of us, two bags, you know.
And they don't necessarily because he kind of throughout that process they kind of just talk at her. They don't talk with her because she kind of goes on about her. She starts talking about her life. Number one, her mom's from New Jersey.
Yes.
I love that. Big shout out.
Yeah, and I do love that they give Gina Rodriguez maybe not a significant backstory, but enough of a backstory to understand why she would be in this situation with these people. Because at first it seems like, well, why would she even be fucking with them whatsoever? But then they give her that bathroom scene with her mom. With the bathroom call with her mom.
Hang on, hang in there. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But it's funny that she just goes on about it, and they, they listen in for the turbulence, and then then they sort of like they're trying to find. You can tell they're trying to pick apart stuff she's talking about to see if they can work an angle on her.
Yes.
And then he kind of talks at her about his theories and all his stuff, and she's not really like you said. You see where I'm going with this? Not at all. But they're impressed by her because she just listened to them.
She just listened and kind of just gave
because
her
that's
two
something
cents.
she does probably in most awkward interactions. Which I find that a lot of attractive women or just attractive people in general, they have to do. Like people kind of insist upon themselves talking to them, and it's kind of like. But I'm not into this person, but it's going to be an awkward situation if I shut him down.
But it's also very, just very much in her character to just be a conversation person.
Yeah,
talks,
there's a couple of things going on here.
So that's, exactly what I'm thinking. So, they all get together, right? So
and I like Evan Rachel Wood's face because she's looking at them. Because
the entire movie, her face is great.
Because she, I don't know. Number one, she's almost an audience at this point, where she's kind of taken aback that they're talking to her like that, and I think she picks up on the fact they're kind of revealing the plot to her.
Yeah, and
also,
she's like,
what the fuck?
She's like, why are you doing this? And also, probably this is where those first signs of jealousies must start coming in, to where are they being nicer to this stranger than they are to me? Yeah.
Talking about, it's not unfounded jealousy by any means.
No, not whatsoever.
Because they stop at this kind of. That was an interesting little rest stop. It was a bar, it was a corner store, and it was a gas station all at once.
I wouldn't be surprised if places like that exist. Yeah,
true.
But it just it is a weird one. Yeah, I haven't seen many of those at least.
But so basically Evan Rachel Wood comes out in full defensiveness. Like, why the fuck are we getting her in on the plan? And at the same time, she has to reveal to her parents about how the money may not be available for some time, and her parents immediately turn on her. They thought this was such a good plan until they didn't get, their instant gratification. So now, suddenly they can't entertain her shit. And they start fleecing her, immediately start fleecing her for Gina Rodriguez's character.
Exactly. And then that's where you get that scene with Gina Rodriguez. She has to go to the bathroom. Gets on a call with her mother.
I thought that was so realistic because I feel like everybody at some point, you've gotten a phone call, you're leaving the house or you're busy with something and you don't want to talk to this person right now, but you can't be rude and say, hey, fuck off, or, I'm on the phone. And you just gotta entertain the conversation, but you gotta search for your way out.
And it's clear that she loves her mother, but it's also clear that her mother seems like someone that is just overbearing in a lot of ways. That's how they portray her.
But it's a great parallel to
exactly
her Gina Rodriguez and her mother's character versus Evan Rachel Wood and Deborah Winger's relationship. You see the extremes of the spectrum. in terms of like care. It's where,
which is why that next scene after that, when Gina Rodriguez is asking old Dolio, how do you know these guys? She couldn't even pick up on the fact that that was her parents.
yeah, she's like, they're my
You
parents.
know,
She's
like,
what the fuck?
you wouldn't think that, you know, because most people, you know, I feel like you may pick up on that, you know, at some point of like, hey, that's mom, or hey, that's dad, but clearly not. And I don't know, I feel like every scene clearly in this movie has, you know, its defined purpose in that way. And I like it for that, because I feel like there's not much fat in this movie. It's obviously an hour and 45 minutes, so it's a short movie, relatively, you know, it's a solid size.
Oh yeah, no.
And I don't think any scene is necessarily superfluous, like, whatsoever. Like, I don't think there's...
Yeah, like, there's nothing
really...
it lingered on too long.
No, it gives you what you need, and then in those scenes, there are some longer scenes, obviously, but they're longer for a reason, right?
Yeah, mostly for artistic reasoning.
Yeah, so they're giving you that. But,
so,
yeah.
Melanie Rodriguez...
Close enough. You could just combine, yeah. Melanie Martinez.
Isn't she a singer, Melanie
She
Rodriguez?
is. I think she's canceled too, but yeah,
Oh,
we're
fuck.
good. Yeah, we're good.
But she lied about what she was doing, which shows she's very fit for this way of life.
And I also love the fact that, like, as she's admitting to the lie, it's a perfect way that most people, like, that are just trying to get out of the way of something that they did wrong, just do it. She's like, I'm not a pharmacist, or
a physician's
assistant or whatever. She's like, I'm not a physician's assistant. I don't even know why I said that, but then immediately moves on. Like, wait, no,
she also didn't totally lie, because she works at an optometry place, so technically she is some kind of a physician's assistant.
So actually, I never even thought about that. Yeah, technically a physician's assistant, but most
so
of
it probably was close enough to the truth. So
yeah,
she's
like,
called out on
technically a physician's assistant, but there are people that are actually like physician's
That's
assistant.
An actual
That's
job.
a job
Yeah,
title, you know. So it's
she hatches this plot.
That's what, like, George Santos said. Can we get, like, I'm not a Jew, I'm Jewish, you know, like one of those of things.
That guy's not even real.
That honestly.
Every time I hear a news story about him, this guy can't be fucking real. Like, I can't wait. Like, sooner or later, he's gonna get arrested for something, and they're just gonna pull a fucking mask off, like you see in the Scooby Doo.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's gonna happen. I mean, he did get arrested, so let's see what happens.
Did he get arrested?
Yeah, a while ago he got arrested, and or at least indicted. I'm not sure if fully arrested, but either way.
Enough about him.
Yeah, I think that's as much airtime as he deserves.
Well, you know what? He would fit right in with this group.
Oh yeah, actually, this is the one person you'd want to bring up in this situation, because yeah, he I wouldn't be surprised if George Santos was just hopping around with these guys nowadays, or he has his own little crew like this that he's going around with.
Like he's Tony Soprano. Like a mix of the Sopranos and Oliver Twist.
No,
They're just running schemes.
He's the new Richard Jenkins, and in this scenario. So yeah, they start pulling these scams. Gina Rodriguez's character, obviously.
Or she just basically goes down a list of people who like just kind of clung on to her when they were working there, and they delve into something that I think it's a bit of a subplot in this movie that I actually have my own experience with.
Well, and I want to just say, loneliness is definitely a big.
100%, because it's Evan Rachel Wood dealing with the fact that she's coming to grips with the fact that she has nobody she can truly have a loving relationship. She's been alone
her entire life,
because
spending,
this whole thing is her learning that her parents she's just an asset to them.
Mm-hmm.
She's not so much as anybody they value or even really care that much about, because they say that later on when she leaves, she's like, they're probably gonna call me soon, and they never call.
Nope.
Because so basically it proves that
she was out, she was out. Fuck it.
Yeah.
But obviously,
we'll get into that. But it's kind of highlighted by what they're doing with these older people, that they're kind of Gina Rodriguez. She's kind of using that friendliness she gave them to where
exploiting it. Yeah.
I get like that. I don't get like that. I do get lonely.
I've never been lonely my entire life.
I've always had loving people around me 100% of the time.
That sounds scarier. I don't know. When you're in the bathroom taking a shit, like, hey!
You're doing great, son! Yeah!
Honestly, I mean, there are some people like that, probably.
Yeah. Helicopter parenting.
Yeah, honestly, like, geez.
But, that there are some people who... it happens a lot with older people.
Yeah.
To where when I work in different houses, there are some people who like they end up telling like I'm just trying to ask what exactly is wrong with the toilet so I can diagnose it, but I end up
It all
getting.
started in 1953.
No, I really no.
Honestly,
They tell me how long they've been living in the house, who family's been with them, what their husband did, and all these different things. And like some guys kind of roll their eyes at it, but I try to be a little more patient because I'm learning now that some people like you might be the only person they're really talking to, either today or for a couple of days sometimes. So like. Yeah, there's a lot of like unloading onto you because they're just excited to fucking talk to somebody.
And honestly, if you like, obviously many people have experienced that one way or the other. Whether it's just even if you just think back to COVID, I'm sure there was a short period of time where most people were at least limited to the amount of people that they were talking to on a regular basis, if not having it.
I remember that's really what got our podcast off the ground, was I was just flabbergasted and just being able to have an extended conversation with someone.
Yeah, because we weren't really seeing each other very much, so it was like, or anybody really, so it's just like, yeah, you saw who was in your house, maybe like one other person, or like, but you weren't gonna go hang out with all these people because, you know, it's March 2020, you know, so it just brings it back to the point of, yeah, this movie really plays on loneliness in a big way. And the ending song, Mr. Lonely, I feel like it's great that they put that at the end. Yeah.
Is that the song Akon sample?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
What it took me a minute. I'm like, Mr. Lonely. I'm like, they got Akon in this fucking movie? Hell yeah, man.
No, but I love. I do think that it was interesting because they didn't. The score, and we could talk about the music for a second. I think it was very interesting throughout the entire movie. It was different. Like it didn't.
Was there really much of a score in this movie?
There was, yeah. No, there was a significant musical score. I feel like throughout the movie, there's a lot of percussion, some like vocal harmonizing. You see some pianos at some point play their way into. I don't know if there's as many strings as I
think I just have a shitty sound system. I didn't pick up on the score.
No, the score I think was significant in this movie in terms of at least bringing you to one place or the other, because they play a lot of the score when you are either in Old Dolio or like Gina Rodriguez's like view of the world, and I feel like it transitions you like to what they're thinking about easier, and just I think it aids the movie. It doesn't necessarily tell you what they're
it's
thinking.
coming because I remember you notice the score when she's at those that pregnancy class.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the score is very apparent.
That one's very apparent. Even they just show her in her headphones when she's looking at the New York skyline. I think that's important, and that ends up. I believe that's the same song that she has that like incredible dance scene later on in the movie with. And I don't know. I did think the score was very interesting and different. It wasn't just I don't know.
Well, it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't just kind of a placeholder. It had its placeholder, but it's not its.
I put that score in its place. I'll tell you. But yeah, no, seriously.
But it had a function to this movie.
Yes.
And it worked. I think it's
really exactly. So that's why I think honestly so many things about this movie just work because I believe everything that's going on. I love a lot of the artistic choices that are being made, despite the fact that it's like on such a small scale, like compared to. And I just recently saw Oppenheimer, and I loved Oppenheimer, but
the score was very loud. Most Nolan movies have extremely loud.
That's why I wanted to, because Oppenheimer is like artistic, but like in a way that kind of just like the scale is huge and it's throwing a bunch of shit at you, which I loved about that movie. Just fucking monkeys throwing their shit.
That's what I do when I go to the zoo.
But yeah, but in this movie, obviously, it's a lot more subtle, but it's still a lot. It gives you a lot.
It had a function.
Yeah.
So they start running this scheme of where
scamming the old people. We don't need to, get it. They watch the fucking movie, so I hope they fucking did.
I just felt bad for that one old lady. Like mid conversation, they just fucking got
dipped out as soon as they got what they wanted, right? And that's kind of that shows you the way that they are.
Yeah.
Once they get what they want, and you can see Gina Rodriguez's character is kind of just hopping onto this because like she has a bit of loneliness herself, and they show how overbearing can be lonely.
Well, she said herself that like she doesn't see this as wanting money or anything. She just sees this as like some kind of an adventure.
It's something to do. It's something
Like there are
interesting.
people like that that just go on vibes only.
And clearly, it shows early on that she's intrigued by the older people, but that there's also, and obviously this becomes more apparent as it goes on. But I think it shows from the beginning there is an attraction between old Dolio and Gina Rodriguez's character, pretty much from the jump.
Really? It's hinted at more in the end of the movie.
I didn't say into that, but yeah, no, obviously it's, but I feel like it's clear from the jump just by the way that Miranda July
I won't lie to you, I missed that. I thought it was more she was just intrigued by it, like, wow, this family's fucked up, man.
I
like the car wreck effect almost, like, I'm gonna follow these people, just get, how deep does this rabbit hole go?
I don't know when, but I think there are some scenes early on that definitely point to the fact that Gina Rodriguez is incredibly attracted to old Dolio, and obviously vice versa. You can see some of those scenes because as old Dolio says, like, oh, would you wear more clothes? And then you get Gina Rodriguez just smiling back, and she's, because you obviously as Gina Rodriguez, you're like, well, this is just what people wear. So clearly there's something uncomfortable about the way that you think about, and maybe, Gina Rodriguez, I'm not saying she's a perfect character or anything either, but the way that she's written clearly is like, well, she's interested, and also kind of, because of the way that she is, she kind of wants to break old Dolio out of her shell, clearly.
Yeah, that becomes apparent because I think one of the pivotal scenes in the movie is when they go to the second house to kind of rob the place.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's a gentleman who...
That's the peak of the loneliness aspect
he's like,
of this.
The implication I got is that he was in the midst of committing suicide, or just
he's literally on his deathbed.
Yeah, and so he basically all he wants is that he's been separated. I imagine he's been widowed. He's been separated from his family for a long time, which is a great line. He says, he goes, "They're not bad kids. They're just busy." I think is a great.
Yes.
We're talking
cats in the cradle type.
We're talking. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking a lot about loneliness and how people get separated. Like, obviously there's aggressive separation, like the abuse that goes on between the dying family, and then there's just the natural separation of, like, Gina Rodriguez's character and her mom. Like, she's getting older, she can't take kind of like that smotheredness, and this guy where, like, he has no hate in his heart for his children. It's just they moved away, they had their own families. That's something that really happens in life. Like,
sometimes people just grow apart, whether it's family or not family, and that's
it's just
the way that
it's not always something personal. It can a lot of times just be like,
and you can argue whether it's the right or wrong thing depending on whatever the situation is, but it
doesn't
necessarily. But exactly, it doesn't necessarily need to be something personal. That's subjective because everybody's situation is completely different. So but the point is, he also brings up the great line just before that where he says, just don't mess up the house, my kids are going to take it, because he's not stupid, and I love that they know that he's not stupid. Like, he knows he's being taken advantage of in some way, but he wants to get something out of it. He's like, I don't care, I want to die, but I want to feel like when I'm dying there's my family surrounding me, and that there's people around me.
I just want that experience.
But he knows deep down that they are there for nefarious reasons. Like, clearly he knows that.
And then when they pretend, I like when they pretend to be a family, and
oh my god,
they
that scene is
immediately
amazing.
make Gina Rodriguez be the daughter.
Immediately.
But Evan Rachel Wood is made to be a repairman that's there.
That's well, Gina Rodriguez, I think, was using that a little bit to flirt, but that's, regardless. Cool. I mean,
see, I
would have. Obviously, old Dolio's character is not in a position where it would make sense for her to immediately, like, fold, but I would have folded immediately, is all that I'm saying.
Well, I could say she did tap into that fantasy in my line of work where it's like, oh, what is all that?
Exactly.
Everybody always asks me that. It's not true.
Not yet. You'll get there. I believe it.
Not me, man.
But
people don't even tip me. I doubt they're gonna.
They're pretending to be a family, and then obviously old Dolly goes and check on the guy, and then comes back out, and then they continue
mean to her even there that she wants to get the slightest shred of empathy towards the guy.
And then Gina Rodriguez gets on the piano because the guy said he wanted to hear some piano. And then as everybody's starting to become like a family, they focus in on old Dolio and kind of show that, hey, well, this is what she's always wanted. Like, or even if she didn't know it, she's like, oh, this feels nice. Like, it feels, this is normal, because she's never had normal in her entire life before. Like, this scene is normal. Like, her dad sitting watching golf, calling it a one-holer. I love that line too. Like, he made a one-holer. Like, that's a thing. And then the mother talking like about the cake or pie that she made, and Gina Rodriguez just playing the piano.
And the fact it's when it clicks for her that they were always capable of being that way. They just chose not to be for her.
Exactly. But she also, it's clear that the character like is still like not fully understanding everything. Like, she's starting to finally come to realize.
Well, she's still in that mode of like, we're working a job, we gotta stay focused on what we're doing.
Exactly. And then eventually they reveal that the old man does die. So one more second, commercial break. Yeah. At least
Can you hand me the bottle of water? It's by my bag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think we have any more than like 15 minutes left, so we're good.
Yeah, we'll see, this is great. We're breezing through this now.
Wait, it's in the bag, or?
It should be in the side pocket.
Oh, side pocket, yeah. Did I finish my Diet Coke? I did not.
Diet Coke.
Alright, so I think all you gotta do is the save button? Save. What's this segment called?
Ass to ass.
I didn't think about that. And then we can.
I told you Olive Red finished Requiem
Yeah.
for a Dream, right? That book is, but I was just.
Is it like basically the same? They're just the same.
Yeah, and it
thing,
said, but she was describing the last, because it's told in broken parts, like the ending. I want.
Oh, but there's no ass to ass in the book.
No, but I just want to show her the ending with the music.
That's a great, dude. I listened to that Lux Eterna, that song. I have that in my playlist. They play the song a million times in the movie.
That song actually, it was one of those not fully licensed songs that could be played on YouTube. So I've heard it in a million YouTube movies.
Maybe, yeah.
But
I
it was
think I've
still
heard that too.
impactful when I heard it in the movie. I was like, fuck. Dude.
That song is. I put that in my playlist and shit. That song just goes hard.
All right, you want to get back to it?
Yeah. So what was I saying last?
We were talking about.
Oh, the old man dies. All right. Yep.
Old man kicks the bucket.
Alright, so uno, dos, tres. Yeah, so the old man dies. That old man dies. Gina Rodriguez obviously has this freak out about it because a man died. Everybody else in the house kind of is unconcerned by the man's death, including old Dolio. But also, you can see Richard Jenkins' character and Deborah Winger's character, the parents, kind of like consoling Gina Rodriguez.
That's something.
Yeah.
See, that's when I said when she really sees that they always had, like, they console her and they basically tell, they start giving Evan Rachel Wood shit about not finding the checkbook.
Yes.
And it made my stomach turn. Like I struggled to empathize with them in the beginning, which just
yeah, it's tough to empathize with them whatsoever.
But like at that point, it was full bore of like, God, I fucking hate these people.
They are so much, and like that's not its peak. Like it's still like
it's
5 minutes away from peaking. You know?
And I like that. Is this the scene? Because there's a couple of pregnancy class scenes. Is this where Dolio herself is standing up there?
I don't know if that happens immediately afterwards, but that does happen soon.
Well, no, that doesn't happen yet because they get about $600 from the one lady's check.
Yes.
And they were gonna put it down as an advance on rent, and they decide on a whim to buy a hot tub mainly on Gina Rodriguez.
Gina Rodriguez wants it, right?
And so they're like, just like, even though they were desperate for the money, they're like, we'll get you whatever you want. And that's just feeds more to Evan Rachel Wood's character of like, they're like that they would never even like. It calls back to the getaway trip. She was still trying to make that a job, and they absolutely trashed her for thinking of that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they will throw away money on something they will not need.
A hot tub.
And
Where it's like, yeah, they're probably going to return it anyway, but still,
But he
why?
barely justifies it with that, where it's like, you're
Yeah.
going to use it and return it?
And it's clear because the father, he ends up buying this vest that you see on him when he says he looks like a senator, and he had that tie from earlier that he said was expensive. Okay, they could be selling those things, but oh no, because dad wants it, dad gets to keep it.
Yeah.
And
I have a feeling it's been like that the entire time.
obviously, that's the implication of everything within this movie, and it just makes you really feel for old Dolio. I mean, the fact that her goddamn name is Old Dolio, which they get into.
Where she kind of reveals it was almost a scam of itself.
It was a scam.
Because they were like, we'll name our kid after you. Because I think that it was a homeless guy that won like $1 million scratch ticket.
So they were going to try to claim it on his name or whatever, or he died and they were to claim the rest of it. Or something along those lines where they were trying to scam just with the name in and of itself. So her name's a scam. She reveals that at the baby class that she eventually goes to.
And I like how the lady sort of sniffed out that she had no kid and that she was here for
immediately.
her own personal
She
reason.
figured it out immediately
And
that was the case.
like, it's so sweet how she like just in that
And
moment,
she plays into it, yeah.
She just tries to be gentle with her. And I like how you see,
and it makes sense for her character.
It shows off how emotionally stunted. It's very well acted by Evan Rachel Wood.
Oh yeah,
she plays this so well. To like the discomfort at being shown gentleness, it becomes very obvious with when she starts spending more time with Gina Rodriguez's character.
Yeah, definitely.
But
because Gina Rodriguez is obviously she's constantly giving her a little flirtation or even just friendship.
All right, so I'm looking back at my notes and I actually had something I wanted to dispute with you. Now we're at this point now where they have the hot tub, and while Dolio is at one of those pregnancy courses, Gina Rodriguez is hanging out with the parents at the office space.
That's an intense scene.
And they have an ill-fated attempt to seduce her.
Yeah.
Like kind of, and she like.
The plot.
And it's funny. Yeah. It shows that I like how it almost shows her experience to where she's kind of like she's been. Girls,
baited into something.
People have tried to bait her into sex probably for years because she's an attractive person.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, "Oh, you want this, don't you? You want this?"
Soapy titties or whatever she says.
And it's basically like she's fucking with
Richard Jenkins.
Jenkins, and he's playing along. He thinks he's crossing the goal line.
He's like almost.
He's starting to undress himself. He's like, "Oh yeah,
all that, blah blah blah," and like. That man
and
has
I like
to be
how
absolutely delusional to think that would be a possibility.
And I like how they don't show anything like that. They just show him to like frantically dressing like, oh my god, that was such a horrible idea.
Yeah.
Like he feels that shame when he realized he was being stupid.
It's so stupid. And like she was, it's such an awkward scene that makes you realize like, oh, this is like, oh, you hear Deborah Winger's character before they try to seduce her be like, well, do you think that we should do it now, or she might do one more trip, or what? And no, she won't do another. She's not going to do another scam. You might as well try to seduce her now. Like this has been a thing that has been done before.
I peeked at your notes. Do you feel like that had some kind of implication? With
I don't. After watching the entire thing, I actually don't think that that's something that. I don't know. I was torn throughout this is my third viewing of it, of whether that may have been something that Evan Rachel Wood's character, like maybe she was violated in some way as, she was growing up.
But you don't think there's enough there for that?
Personally, I think there's enough there for that interpretation, but I don't have that interpretation. The only reason I think I don't have that interpretation is maybe the final scene where it shows that her parents at least kind of somewhat care about not completely fucking her over. And to me, maybe you could argue either way that has an implication that towards Evan Rachel Wood's character, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you either way. Just the way that I view it, I don't see them that way. I see them as bad people and like horribly abusive, but I didn't see it in that way. I thought they just kind of take advantage of situations. And maybe not that, maybe that, but I don't know. It could have been, it could have gone either way. I just wanted to write that down because I'm like, I don't know. Because at times I feel like when I saw that originally, the first time it kind of hit me and I'm like, what does that, are they gonna, but then they never kind of go back to that. So it may be just something that should be floated out there.
They were gonna get him. they thought they were going to get away with it.
Yeah, and it's something that I think the director, Miranda July, maybe just wanted to throw out there. Like, it didn't want to, give maybe one answer to the other as to that, because they do give you a lot. I mean, in terms of like, well, this is how she was raised, this is what happened. Obviously not word for word, but some things can be left up to interpretation. I think that might be one of those things that isn't even necessarily, some people may see the movie and not even have a question about that whatsoever, one way or the other. So I don't know, I think, but I thought it was another interesting thing to look at just in terms of the character study of old Dolio and what that might mean. But
well, immediately following that scene is pretty much one of the most important scenes in the movie, where Dolio returns to the aftermath of that situation, and I think that's when it just becomes fully apparent. Like, she just has this moment of clarity where like I'm being taken advantage. Like, I have never been shown love in my entire life, to where she basically lays this out, and she has received the check for the $1,500, and she quite literally offers it to her parents to say, because they hear them call Gina Rodriguez hon and speak to her very sweetly. And
I'll give you $1,575 to call me hun.
And
her
the
mother
fact
will not do it.
She can't do it. She tries. She just keeps trying.
Well,
to
you want us to be the fakey, insincere people who
showing basic empathy for your actual child.
Exactly, and I think it does paint an interesting picture of like, well, there is that line of where you don't want to be like so. I don't know the word cliche or insincere.
Well, it's not so much cliche. I
wouldn't say, but it's an interesting that like you have these people where it's like, I'm not going to show them any love whatsoever. I'm not going to give you that. But then also like the fact that you don't want to be overly, obviously you don't want to be the helicopter parent, right?
Well,
you know what I mean? So you can go.
The moment,
but
what
obviously
she was saying, from here. I don't know if it was written into the script, if Deborah Winger sort of called back to it herself. I don't know exactly. But there are this was a very clear moment where they're using like the language of abusers. Like something like well documented things to where like minimizing abuse to where it's like, yeah, you have spent your life being wholly neglectful to your own child, but she's minimizing it and saying like, kind of gaslighting her out of feeling that way in the same way they gaslighted her out of the mother-daughter thing, to where they minimized what she was saying and made it seem trivial and stupid,
and you can
to where they were like, oh, well, you want that fake TV stuff. Like, it's not that, and it's not that, but you don't want to admit it.
And you can tell that the way that they justified it to Evan Rachel Wood's character is by saying things like, well, you get that final scene with the earthquake, and she says a sentence, well, you didn't, I didn't even care about life that much, so I don't even, like...
They didn't want her to care about life or have any sense of it, because they wouldn't be able to use her.
Exactly, but they justified it by telling her like, okay, well, you don't want to be gentle and kind and loving, because then you're just gonna like life too much, and then when you die, you're gonna miss it. Whatever. Like they use this justification that you can see, because they constantly have this fear of the big earthquake, right? And obviously in California there is lore.
Richard Jenkins has this thing, like he's very doomsaying. He's talking about things like disease and natural disasters, like something.
This will kill you. That'll kill you. Everything. They're gonna get you.
Like he's sort of doomsaying that this earthquake's going to wholly wipe California off the map.
And that's why they need to be the way that they are for whatever reason. It's like, oh, don't touch the doorknob, or else the doorknob will kill you.
Everything's gonna be electrified when there's an earthquake.
Yeah.
Which I'm sorry, I don't. I guess I'll give respect to people who live in California. You fucking live where the fucking ground shakes. How do you live where the ground shakes?
It's normal for them. I don't know.
Hurricanes are not the same thing. Hurricanes are just like natural disasters. They fly and they happen. You can get lucky. You can live your whole life, never see a bad hurricane. We've seen one in our quarter of a century of being alive.
Basically.
Fucking, the ground just starts shaking. And there's levels to how much the ground can start shaking. It can fucking rip the city apart.
I natural disasters.
Would you live in a house like that? Like, yeah, you know, at any random time, this whole thing can come crumbling down.
I mean, in theory, can't they
and
all?
you have no
right?
one.
But
At least a
yeah.
hurricane, you have like 3-4 days. Like, yeah, grab your shit, run for your life.
Yeah, you hope so, right? But
An
most of the
earthquake,
time you do.
yeah, you're just fucked.
Yeah,
It's
no,
fucked.
earthquake, you really just don't get a chance.
I don't
to do
understand
it.
how anybody and
Move out of California.
Yeah, and also when she's in that gas station, that scene, she buys what 3 bags of chips, a couple of things of candy. The guy's like, yeah, $29.50.
I would because
fuck-
that's California.
Fuck California. I don't understand anybody who lives out there.
Dude, when I was out there last year, gas was it was
It
high.
was like $6.99 out
$6
there.
Yeah, I think I saw one for $7 a gallon. It was insane. It was insane. That's why we had a rental car just for one day, and even that rental car was like we had to fill it up halfway, and it was not a fun,
Brutal.
you know, just crazy. I'm like $50 for half a friggin' tank in a rental car? Like, what is this shit? Insane,
Fucked
insane.
up.
But either way, yeah. So Gina Rodriguez kind of takes in.
Yeah, under the
Dolio
guise
here.
that I'll do it for the money. And see,
Meanwhile, just trying to develop, break her out of her shell, develop a friendship, and obviously more than a friendship, a relationship.
see, I disagree with that romantic tinge, and
I think it's
See,
romantic the entire time. I mean,
I
from
saw
almost
it
from the
more
jump.
at first when she's kind of deprogramming her, like she removes her from the abusive situation, and like all of this. I don't know if Miranda July has experience with this, or because she wrote it. Obviously, I don't know, but like there's a lot of like getting the person out there, convincing them not to go back because. Dolio starts giving justification. Well, it's really a 3-person job. I should be back helping them. And it's just like, no, don't.
She constantly wants to go back. As soon as she leaves, even though she knows how bad it is, she wants to go back.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And so, but with that, the way she was kind of like making her pancakes and doing those little things for, I saw that less romantically. I saw them almost developing like a fraternal like sister bond.
I saw it as romantic.
I saw it as a
partnership the same
development
way.
because like.
But what, you can't have a romantic relationship and also like, you know,
Be your sister?
Yeah, be like, and do like nice and honest things with each
No,
other.
that's
and
true.
Do, you know
That's
what I
true.
mean?
I don't know. I guess
you know, it's not portrayed in a way where Gina Rodriguez is like, I want Evan Rachel Wood. I want that thing. Put it on.
I want Evan Rachel's Wood.
Like clearly that's not what happened, but like I think that there's clearly an attraction there, and I even think at the one point where Gina Rodriguez is like setting up her bed, and then old Dolio says to her like, are you trying to rile me up? And Gina Rodriguez, as she's trying to like tuck her in or whatever, Evan Rachel Wood kind of like grabs her hand and like puts it back because she's like, I'm not fucking with anything gentle. Like you can't touch, and they establish that from the beginning. And he takes her hand, but Gina Rodriguez like kind of has a second of melting when old Dolio takes her hand. Like she is very attracted to her.
I think I might have actually been a moron.
I don't.
didn't
To
get
me,
this.
I would definitely, I would throw.
I
that
think you
back
were
in
just
there.
horny watching this because it was Gina Rodriguez on
No,
screen.
it would be
And any bit
regarding.
of gentleness, you were like, oh yes, for me, mommy, please.
Gina Rodriguez is a wonderful woman. She's great. But no, go back and watch it. I guarantee you. That is my 3rd time, and I've picked up on it every time. So I think I'm gonna say that at least for the record.
There's kind of a moment to go back because one of the things she wrote down like that Gina Rodriguez has to do for her to get the money is a quote-unquote birth crawl, which is what she saw in the pregnancy class. They decide to do it at the gas station from earlier in the film because the light was out, it's a dark room, and that's when a really bad earthquake hits. And
The big one, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah, the big
and
one.
then Evan Rachel Wood has that speech that you called to earlier where she
thinks she's dead.
She lays
Yeah.
out kind of where, and she basically implies that she was always really aware of how shitty her parents were to her.
But
to
she
where
thought that it was okay and normal.
She
you know?
just figured that the people who cling to relationships in their life aren't like
They're not doing it right.
They're
Yeah.
doing it wrong. I'm right. They're like, I was raised the right way. I could leave this life with no regrets because I had nothing that holding me here. But you guys have something holding you here.
And like she was finally vindicated by dying in the earth, quote unquote dying in the earthquake, and I do love the artistic choice of making it completely black to begin with, and then kind of fading
light
in the stars.
Yeah, I saw. You know what's funny? When I first, I thought I was like, is that it? Did they die?
Yeah.
Like there was a couple.
No, same thing. First time I saw it, I'm like, oh wait.
Is this really how this movie's gonna end?
No, I did think the same thing the first time as well, and I'm like, that would have been interesting. But no, I do like the way that it goes after that, because I think that would have been a hard task to pull off. But obviously she doesn't die. She has that funny scene afterwards that we already talked about.
Yeah, in the gas station. Because these other people. It's almost like the death of her understanding in that part of her life.
Essentially, it's a near-death experience.
Yeah.
You know, and like everyone hopefully has not experienced a near-death experience, but everyone has an idea of like, you come close to something, like you have to step on your brakes really hard, and you're like, oh wait, like things could have been really bad, really everyone's been
it's not even
in a situation.
Like near-death things. It's like people who get cancer and come back from it. They
I know, anything like that.
On life.
Anything where it's like, okay, well, my life could have been significantly different if blank happened and blank was close to happening. Like it's one of those weird situations. So she comes out of this and she kind of wants to do everything differently. Though she did tell Gina Rodriguez, she was like, I was just trying to scam you the whole time and blah blah blah.
It was almost like a justification. She was trying to. I think Gina Rodriguez.
I didn't believe her for a second.
There was like a moment of fake conflict where it's really, to me, she was. I always understood it. I guess they were trying to create like a moment of fake conflict, where she was really just trying to push herself away from Gina Rodriguez. Like,
old Dolio was just trying to bullshit and say like,
I never liked you. We were just trying to rob. I was sent here by my parents to get your information.
Yeah, and that's exactly, and it clearly was not the case. And like you see her, and she tries to make it up to her. I'll smash my hand with this rock, and then she starts crawling after her mother. And I think it's interesting that they put the mother's phone call back in there, because it kind of showed you Gina Rodriguez, you know, falling away from old Dolio and maybe like being more friendly and happy with her mother, because she's like leaning back into that relationship, but also a different kind of unhealthy relationship. You know,
even though it's not the healthiest with Gina Rodriguez, she realized how much different it can be. She could have had. So I just want to cut in here. I want to say shout out to the moms out there that are trying to make it work. Yeah, the good ones for sure. You know, I made me think of my mother. I gave my mother a hug.
Yeah, no, it definitely shows you that like, oh, like there are some out there that are not
really
so good.
Shit.
Not so good. Yeah,
not everybody is meant to be a parent.
Oh,
yeah, I think that is the truth of the age.
Definitely not Deborah Winger, or at least her character. I mean, if she has any children.
I think she has 2 kids. I'm sure she's doing fine.
Yeah, but
or maybe not. This whole film was a projection of how she treats her kids.
Who knows? She read the script and she was like, "How did they know?" Miranda July. How do you know? But regardless, the parents get back in the fold.
Yeah, because now Dolio is kind of leaning into kind of deprogramming with Gina Rodriguez.
She has the and goes right into that dancing scene. I don't want to skip over that, because I think that dancing scene is like interesting, because that was like one of the last things that she had to do to check the checklist. And
that was really a moment where she was really with herself.
That was just cathartic, and like it's clear that she has no idea what this dancing. It is some weird crunk core dance, like just interesting weird dancing. But it's just expressive.
It's a sense of liberation.
Yeah, it's just her doing this weird dance and like just getting all of her emotions out there, and then they get the call back from her parents.
Because her parents are again using like this abusive partner, abusive person language. They call
but you're not sure yet.
They call it honeymoon phasing, where basically they promises to change and all these gifts they buy. And I like how they are still unable to truly connect with Dolio, because they were like, it's all the way up to 18. She's like, I'm 26. Like they don't even know how old she is.
But it's interesting because you do see it, and you're kind of seeing this scene more through the eyes of Gina Rodriguez at points, because you're not sure, and neither is Gina Rodriguez. Like, is this legitimate? Is it not? You're thinking like along the lines of Gina Rodriguez of like, this is probably a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, no.
But there's a part of you where it's like, well, the earthquake did happen.
Well,
so did this change the mind?
I was worried the whole time watching it, because I felt like I've seen people get sucked back into things.
Well, no, exactly.
Like my
I
own
was
personal
curious as to whether,
and I was like, oh God, they're gonna pull her back in.
I was curious as if it was genuine. Old Dolio wants it to be genuine, obviously, because it's your parents. You want it to be like, okay, well, this is what our life led up to. This is what it should be. But also, she also has Gina Rodriguez in the back of her mind, like, don't believe that shit. Like, that's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
so
none of that's real.
They invite them to dinner, and there's like this really pitiful attempt by her parents to sort of, they do a face.
I think it's a good attempt. I because for me, at least the first time watching the movie, I wasn't 100% sure, because they lead off the conversation with a little, like, an anecdote about, like, their life before Old Dolio, like, when they were living straight. And then they also get into the fact that, like, when they're talking to Old Dolio, like, hey, well, this is kind of the way that we did things, and this is the reason why we did those things. And none of them are necessarily good reasons, obviously. Like, none of them are good reasons to abuse your daughter, essentially, for 26 years. But Old Dolio wants them to be true, because it's like, okay, well, this is what you lived.
It's a lifetime of abuse for his pretty shallow justification.
Exactly. And you do see it as like, okay, well, if it's going to be like this, if they're genuine and legitimate about it, whatever, that's really the life that they lived. Or is it just another con or scam? And you get to the point where you're not 100% sure as an audience member. Like, you may, at least I think most people are probably thinking, okay, this probably still is a scam of some kind, but they did leave the money in the house. The money was still there despite being in the house. You get that scene where it's like, okay, well, if they go through the three options. If the money is still there, then they love me. If the money is not there, you know, they hate me, blah, blah, blah. Or if my third is there, we still care about you, but this is the way we are and we can never change. Yeah. Those are the three options that are laid out. And so the money's still there.
There's that briefest moment of seeming like it is going to change, and then they walk out and they have stolen everything.
After they go to sleep.
Quite literally everything.
Yeah. And I love that they focus on Gina Rodriguez's character right before they go to bed, because they can tell that her life is like, oh, well, now this is kind of over. She's going to go back with her parents, and I'm like, nothing seemed right to her in that moment. But then when she woke up, all of her stuff's gone. She has these conflicting emotions of like, oh, I fucking knew it. I knew it. But also like, well, now all my shit's gone, obviously freaking out about that. But also, she only had all this shit, you know, from her overbearing parents. And I think that's just a weird culmination of emotions that Gina Rodriguez, I think, brings together eloquently and just greatly interacting performance, just by like kind of just like crying and laughing and like that whole deal of like just all those conflicting emotions, where she's like, it's just stuff. Because it's like, well, you know, whatever, it's just stuff. But now she knows that, hey, Old Dolio, it's me and you. Like, we're ride or die now, because clearly they're, you know, we're in this together.
And it turns out her parents had left the gifts they bought her, and they returned it to what I assume is like Target.
Whatever, and
it turns out the money from those returns is exactly what the third one. So this whole pretend to win her back was just a long con.
Just a long con.
Just to give her her cut. And to have
but
the
they did give her cut, so it is, they give it at least, like, the parents, I like that it's at least a little complicated, to where it's like the parents are abusive, but it's not like they're cartoon villains.
But at the same time,
I didn't see them as
like,
cartoon villains.
I have to imagine, like, I don't know how they got, like, if they ran some credit scams, so they really just wanted the money in full.
Oh, what do you mean? They got the, well, yeah, no, that's, yeah, they probably ended up somehow keeping the money in full for themselves. That's aside from the point, but they still did give a third, because they could justify that as being part of a different scam that she's not a part of. So yeah, technically she wouldn't have to be deserved to get a third of that. But regardless, yeah, they do take their 2/3, and then that's going to be the last time that they ever talk to each other or see each other.
So
and everything.
In essence, they've paid, like, to quote A Bronx Tale, they have paid $500. She has paid $500 to get her parents out of her life. Basically,
that's what it boils down
in that
to.
moment of euphoric, like, freedom, turns around, immediately starts making out with Gina Rodriguez, and that's not a joke. Like, that sounds like something I would say.
No, yeah, no.
But the film ends with just a passionate kiss between the two of them, which, you know, I guess I totally missed the romantic part, so I won't lie to you. I was kind of floored. I was like, why are they kissing each other?
No, I feel like, okay, because even I didn't pick up on it as much the first time, but I think going back these last 2 times watching this movie, I definitely picked up the romance more. I definitely did maybe see it more so, but no, it definitely go back. You can see a lot of the romance just blossoming between the two.
Oh,
I
mean, it's
just
vindicated by the end of the film, so it has to be there.
Oh, it is. It's
I
not,
was just saying
everything
earlier
in this
that
movie,
I saw it
yeah.
as more of a fraternal relationship. I guess I was just totally wrong.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, you've never been in a girl-on-girl relationship, so I
Have
mean,
you?
obviously neither have I. But what I'm saying is, there are things that we're not necessarily going to understand for that reason, in terms of just the way that girls interact with each other in relationships, because we are not girls in relationships with other girls, unless I don't know. I would have no idea, but I have not. Unless you play The Sims, I don't know. Can you do that in The Sims? Probably. Oh yeah. Oh, trust me, bro.
I can't say on air the salacious sins I've done as The Sims.
I don't even think I've ever played The Sims. I think I had like the My Sims, like the little ones on the DS or something at one point.
You didn't have PS2 Sims?
No,
Computers?
no. I knew a bunch of people.
Bad things were happening on The Sims game.
Oh jeez. All right. That's good
So,
to know.
I was scamming my only child and being horribly emotionally abusive.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So, this movie ends, 3rd time I've seen it, genuinely, and this is no, like, bullshit, this is one of my favorite movies, of all time. I love this movie, and I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did the first time that I put it on. That's happened, obviously, with a lot of movies, After Sun most recently as well, I think. I know, After Sun, very different movies in a lot of ways.
That's a movie I have to rewatch because I've gotten clips on TikTok. I'm like, holy shit, I forgot how good.
I got the Blu-ray upstairs, so
I might just borrow it.
Yeah, but that's a great one, and obviously we have an episode on that as well. So check that out whenever you want. But aside from that, yeah, I think we can kind of just anything else you want to say about this?
Well, do you have any concern about my final thoughts? My rating?
No, I mean,
usually do this film.
No, I'm gonna give it. As I just said, it could be expected one of my favorite movies of all time. 10 out of 10. I love this movie. Probably in my top 15, top 20 of all time. It's just one of my favorites. I love this thing, and it doesn't get worse any of the times that I've seen it. If anything, it gets better. Some things I picked up on. I didn't even get on the first watch. That was just me being stupid. You were missing out on the plot line of the romance. I missed out on the 1/3 plot line where the 525 at the end. Like I just wasn't. It didn't click the
you
first
just
time.
Thought that they.
I didn't understand the significance of the 525 or the necklace, and I'm just like, what does the number have to do with? Like, there's just certain things that I wasn't picking up on as much, and that just happens with any movie. So that's something that like, oh, that got better on the second watch, and then this time I just noticed some of the smaller things. I think a good movie, revealed itself over time. So. Yeah, 10 out of 10 for me. Love this movie. Hard for me to love it more, thus the 10 out of 10
Yeah.
rating. Nothing I didn't like about this movie for the most part. Your thoughts?
I really didn't like this movie.
What the hell did you just say? I don't think you can say that after everything you've said during.
So my rating, I wanted to give it like a 6.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I fell towards a 7 because it was insanely well acted.
But you haven't mentioned the thing you didn't like so far about the movie.
It was well done. There were just, I'm kind of disappointed to learn that they went the romantic angle on it. I might have liked it more if they went more of the family building aspect and less of a romantic thing and more of like she's platonically building her own family with a surrogate sister. I would have.
Why does it matter if they're fucking or not fucking?
Who
cares?
I guess not. It's just my personal that was to me. Maybe it's my own headcanon. My headcanon seemed. I enjoyed that headcanon more. I don't know. I
just
felt
don't think it matters whether it's a romantic thing or a friendship thing.
I think I would have liked this movie more because it seems like her sort of becoming herself. They only give you like 3 instances of it, and hardly that.
I mean, it's about the movie is definitely more of the journey than the outcome.
Well, no, I'm not saying that I want to see her look normal. I'm saying like she seemed, Evan Rachel Wood's character seemed like she had to be pretty much forced into every instance of being herself, and I get.
But she is 26 and has been abused her entire life. So,
I know.
I mean,
I'm not saying she should have been doing backflips. I'm just saying that I would have liked to see that more. I would have liked.
I think it would have been disingenuous. I don't
Well,
think
no.
the movie would have
Right,
worked.
so
as well.
I think we're on the wrong page here. I'm not saying I want to see the end product where she's normal. I wish the movie had expanded more. I feel like the movie could have had a longer second act, with her leaning into like sort of like more of building that bond between her and Gina Rodriguez, to where they're kind of like she's introducing her to new things and stuff like that. I would have liked more of that, and I felt like. I don't know.
I
It
think
felt
it gave
kind
me
of.
enough.
It felt kind of shallow
Yeah.
to me. I'm not saying that that may not be true for everyone, but I didn't get as much of a satisfaction out of like, yeah, she's moving in a good direction. Because by the end of the movie, I still felt like, yeah, she could go right back to them.
I disagree completely. I think it's very final. I don't think there's a chance in the world that she goes back, and I think that just makes it like 525. I'm out of here. There's no chance I'm ever going back. Obviously, it's one of those situations where it's like, well, she's addicted, right? So like she's gonna have feelings that, oh well, I want to go back to my parents or whatever. But I think there is more finality in it. And now she's gonna have someone that cares about her, for her, and seemingly, Gina Rodriguez may have her own reasons, and who knows? You don't know a ton about her character, but she does seem sincere, and she does seem like a good person. But hopefully, she's getting into this relationship for the right reasons. But it's possible that she's not as well. But I do think that just adds another layer of depth to the movie, which I like and appreciate. I don't think it necessarily has to be perfect.
And that's fine. I'm not. We always say on this podcast, my opinion is not final. The movie did not do for me what I expected it to do for me.
Well, that's expectations.
Well,
You know,
I don't know. On paper, I thought this movie would have moved me, but it did not move me. I was surprised.
I brutally cried the first time I watched
No,
this
and
movie.
that's fine.
If
I didn't watch,
I brutally.
I won't blame. If I didn't watch After Sun with you, I would have been a sobbing mess.
Oh,
on
dude,
floor.
second time, I think every time I watch After Sun, at least a tear is coming to my eye.
We were two grown men just sitting there.
Yeah,
It was
honestly.
a moment. It was more of an emotional moment than
After Sun,
Dolio ever had with her parents.
well, I agree with that, but After Sun's also like,
It's about a totally different thing.
yeah, it is about an entire. I mean, there's definitely a loneliness aspect to it, but and I also think it may be easier, at least for us, to relate to After Sun. Age and
Depressed men in
male,
age.
and yeah, I mean, like at least maybe it's like, oh, I know what it's like to be a guy. Maybe not because she's such a far out there character, but I think more so it just brings it just highlights things that everybody's experienced, like we were talking about in loneliness, in different ways. Like, hopefully nobody has lived the life of old Dolio, but people have lived aspects of her life in different ways.
Oh,
Same
for
thing
sure.
with Gina Rodriguez.
I saw
and,
things. I saw moments that I've seen
of
in my
course.
own life.
Of course.
I won't even lie to you.
Yeah, so that's one thing that definitely took me away. I wouldn't say that I brutally cried during this one. I brutally cried during After Sun. I definitely teared up during this.
You
though.
wouldn't.
That's brutally.
All right, so
turn here, though.
10 out of 10 versus 7 out of 10. That still breaks out.
But I don't
into-
think a 7 out of 10 justifies the you saying you did not like them.
Well,
That's not necessarily the right phrase. I think.
My personal opinion does not I'm not saying the movie's shit. I'm not going to sit here and say objectively this movie is bad, or objectively say people shouldn't watch this.
Well,
I think it's a good movie for a lot of people. I just personally I didn't like it.
But how do you give it a 7 out of 10? Is your rating and opinion separate from each other? Is that how that works?
I
don't
just-
know how to. Usually, my rating and
Well,
opinion kind of go hand in hand. Usually, because it's my experience with the movie. It's my experience. If I ever end
I
up in a
divorced
situation,
myself slightly from my opinion because I felt like with the acting and with the direction, I felt like in my heart I couldn't give it a low rating. I felt like that would feel like being either A, too subjective, or B, contrarian on purpose. So I had to give credit where credit was due and gave the movie a 7 rating.
See, a 7 is weird for me in that situation because to me, whenever something like that occurs where I'm just like, I don't really fuck with the movie like that, but like I appreciate what it's doing. A la, and this is controversial, not necessarily the shoes thing anymore, but the Lord of the Rings, just not my thing. Don't really fuck with it. But I appreciate a lot that went into it. So I guess I do. I put like I'm around like a 5 or 6 a lot of the times where I'm at with one of those kind of movies. 7 just seems strong to me, but that's your. I mean, I don't give a shit one way or the other.
To
I'm
me,
just thinking,
I always viewed it as subset. Like if I rate something 6 out of 10, I have no interest of ever revisiting it again.
Shouldn't that be a 5 or a 4 just based on how percentages work? You know, I'm just. To me, a 6 is like. No, I like it enough to revisit it, but I probably won't very soon.
For me, you know what? I think I'm getting lost in the numbers here.
Well, the only reason I bring up the numbers is because I think it's interesting to talk about ratings sometimes too.
Well, I just
to me a 5 is like I could give or take this movie. A 6 is like you did something to impress me, but I didn't love it. A 7 is like I liked it. 8 and above, obviously, you know, is just like. I really like this for whatever reason, and really, really like this, or I thought it was amazing, you know, kind of. And then down the line, anything past a 5 is like, this movie fucking blows. And I don't want anything to do with this anymore, right?
Like, I think I gave Siberia a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was around a 4. Honestly, I think I gave Siberia a 5 only because I respected a little bit of what it was, like, attempting to do, but, you know, that's kind of where I was at with that. But, yeah, I don't know. 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10 means 17 out of 10. I think that's how that works. Yeah. That's just ignore math and we can pretend that that's what that means.
Yeah, see? Okay, so that was our thoughts on Kajillionaire. So, yeah.
Hopefully you checked it out already.
Or if not, you know, I guess our general recommendation would be...
We just spoiled the shit out of it.
I would say it could do something for a lot of people. You know, it just wasn't me personally, but I'll say if you're on the fence about it, I'd say watch it. It might something in that movie might move for you to what it didn't move for me, and it might become a very important movie for you. Yeah, so with that, we would recommend it. So moving on to bigger and not so better things.
Not so better things.
Well, we don't know yet. We're not there.
Oh, we don't know. Okay. I thought you were gonna purposely recommend a shit movie.
I will just let's watch Priest again. No, but and also if you have gotten Kajillionaire spoiled the shit out of you and you want to go to a movie with similar vibes, as we keep a tradition to where the non-picker shut up. Shut up.
The what?
The non-film pick person. They recommend 2 similar movies, and to me, it would be the 2 films by Sean Baker. Generally, Sean Baker's whole vibe of Red Rocket and The Florida Project, more of like feeling very grounded in reality, kind of ridiculous characters, and also a lot of emotional punches.
Have you seen Tangerine? Sean Baker's other movie? I haven't seen it either. I put on the first 10 minutes and I knew it was like I didn't.
You were too high for it.
No. I didn't think the vibe was just not what I was feeling in that moment. I'm like, it's not necessarily bad because I trust Sean Baker because I love The Florida Project and I love Red Rocket, but I'm like, oh, I just can't do that. It was just like a lot because the personalities in that movie are clearly like intense, and I'm just like, I can't do intense personalities right now, yeah. Like for whatever reason that night I was just not feeling it. But at some point I want to watch Tangerine, shot entirely I think on an iPhone 5 or iPhone 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would trust anything Sean Baker does.
Yeah. I was gonna say shot on an iPhone 4. I'm like, that's a weird line to draw.
Remember 2010? Great years they were. Whatever happened to them.
I had an iPhone 4 a lot longer than I want to admit. All right, that's all I'll say about that.
All right. So that, you know, if you're not gonna watch Kajillionaire, I'd say watch Sean Baker. Get into that.
I mean, fuck. If you haven't watched Sean Baker yet, what are you doing? Seriously.
Well, I would trust any. This guy sounds like an NFL linebacker. How can you not trust?
Yeah, I mean.
Baker from the outside tackles.
Yeah. Stephen Baker, touchdown maker. Shout out. Retweet, please. Okay. Or is it not called a retweet anymore? What the fuck is Musk doing now? Who knows?
We're not getting into that. I refuse to get into that on basic principles.
I'm not even on.
But you know what we're going to be getting into next week? We are going to get into the 2003 Peter Hedges film that he wrote and directed.
What the fuck is that? Yeah, all right.
Let's see.
I'm not. Well, tell us the name of it.
It is called Pieces of April.
Pieces of April.
It premiered. It was nominated for some Oscars. Actually, stay with me on this.
Fucking Jesus Christ!
No, 21,000 reviews.
I'm recommending a student film next year. Next week, just to even
21,000. You said 35,000. It's 21,000.
Fair enough.
God damn it.
Fair enough.
But So
nominated for 1 Oscar. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine.
it stars a very young Katie Holmes. Actually, a year after Phone Booth came out.
Katie Holmes. All right, I could do some Katie Holmes.
But I think it's very on par, considering we just watched Kajillionaire.
Okay.
I think it's very on par. I think you're going to get a great kick out of it.
Okay.
And the moment I watched it, I was like, you were one of the first person I'm like, I gotta fucking show it to these people.
Okay. All right. So,
So-
what genre are we looking at here?
This is
like-
this is even more slice of life than Kajillionaire, I'd say.
Okay.
It's
okay.
like...
So it's a similar type of genre, at least.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So.
And you want to talk about a movie to where the climax I started to cry a little bit? I'll give you that one.
Okay. All right. So I'm
Sticking
I'm
with
excited.
family.
I'm excited. So what's the short description?
So
here?
basically,
A wayward daughter invites her dying mother and the rest of her estranged family to her apartment for Thanksgiving dinner. Okay.
that sums it up perfectly.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we will revisit this in 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
I hope the moon and the stars that Steven will be sitting here right with us
I
next
hope
week.
so. I'm giving this. I hope you know. Regardless, this is gonna be a 10 out of 10 for me. I hope you know. Now I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I don't care. Just out of spite.
You know, why do you
I'm
have
try-
me on this podcast if you're just gonna trash how I react? You know, there's so many. You could get Bernardo on here, and he might give you a better answer.
I don't know anime. That's the problem.
We'll start watching anime then,
I
and
don't
then we
like
could have
it.
great.
I don't. That's another controversial opinion. There you go. Except I like that one film, Your Name, but even that
Okay.
was obnoxious at times. But I'll get into my. I just don't.
We
like
could
anime.
have a whole separate anime.
Yeah.
But for now, those were our thoughts on Kajillionaire. So stay tuned next time for Pieces of April. Hopefully with a bit of a tricycle going on here.
Yeah,
So,
big time tricycle.
hope dearly.
Miranda July in July. That's what I'm talking about, baby. All right, see you later. Have a good night.